Billionaire Marc Lore has been making some crazy life changes this past year, starting with leaving his high-paying CEO position at Walmart, then buying the Minnesota Timberwolves with his friend Alex Rodriguez, and now he is focused on changing the trajectory of our civilization by building a $400 billion sustainable city in the middle of the desert. If you've never heard of Marc Lore before, that's okay, because before I made this video, I didn't know much about him either, but I think that you'll agree after watching this video that his ideas are as fascinating as they are inspirational. See, Marc has a long history of launching companies, and he describes himself as a serial entrepreneur, but his plans to build this sustainable city is about as ambitious as you can get when it comes to real estate investing, except maybe with the exception of trying to colonize Mars. In today's video, we are going to talk about who Marc Lore is, and then we're going to dive deep into this plan of his to build a 150,000 acre sustainable city over the course of the next 40 years. If you're new to my channel, by the way, my name is Scott. I'm a real estate investor and developer myself out of Arizona. Here on my channel, we talk all things real estate, so if you're into that kind of thing, think about hitting the subscribe button before we go any further, because I'm posting new videos every week. Before we talk about the plans for this sustainable city, first we have to talk about who Marc Lore is. Marc was born in Staten Island on May 16th, 1971, which makes him 49 years old today. He was an entrepreneur from a very young age, making money through middle school doing things like selling newspapers, mowing lawns, and washing cars. On his own LinkedIn profile, he says, "As a young 4-year-old, I always wanted to be a farmer because they grow stuff from nothing. And while I didn't become a farmer in the literal sense, my intrinsic desire to make things grow, whether that be a business or an individual's career, is still very much alive." Pretty cool way to look at his working life, because there really are a lot of similarities in a farmer's pursuit of growing crops to an entrepreneur's pursuit of growing businesses. Marc went to school at the University of Pennsylvania and Bucknell University after spending just a little bit of time in corporate America before going off to found his first company, Pitt Inc. From 1991 to 2001, Marc was CEO of Pitt Inc., which was an alternative to eBay. In 2001, he sold the company though to Topps for $5.7 million. After that, his next big venture was when he started a company that he co-founded called Quidsi, which was a parent site to websites like diapers.com and soap.com. Quidsi ended up being the source of one of the biggest financial windfalls that Marc Lore has ever had, because in 2011, Amazon acquired his company for $545 million. Marc worked with Amazon for several years following the acquisition before he left for his next big venture. It wasn't long before Marc was creating the next big thing, and that is when he founded Jet.com in 2014. Jet.com was a website that challenged Amazon, because on that site you could basically shop for anything that you want, but what was cool is that it would price shop the item for you to make sure that you got the best deal. So if you thought that Marc had a big win with Quidsi, the story about Jet.com is even crazier. Just 2 years after launching, Marc got into negotiations with Walmart because they realized that they needed some serious help in the e-commerce space. In August of 2016, Walmart announced that they were going to acquire Jet.com for $3.3 billion. Just like on the Amazon deal, Marc Lore stuck around with Walmart as CEO and a consultant for several years, but in March of 2020, Walmart announced that they were shutting down Jet.com. Yes, just 4 years after they spent $3.3 billion on this company. Another win for Marc, I suppose, but a huge loss for Walmart, although they did get to retain all of Jet.com's employees during that transition. Plus, I'm sure they learned a lot from Marc about the e-commerce space during that time that he acted as CEO. Marc Lore agreed to stick around with Walmart for another 5 years following the acquisition of Jet.com, but he always had plans to move on to the next big thing after he did his time with them as an advisor. Fast forward to 2021, and now Marc is working on his biggest and most ambitious venture yet. This one is called Telosa, and it's probably the reason that you clicked on this video to begin with. The summary of the project is this: Marc is looking to find land in the middle of the desert in order to build a city that's about 150,000 acres, which will house about 5 million residents, and it will be a completely sustainable city. He admits that it will take as long as 40 years to pull this off and bring this project to 100% completion, but the first phase should be finished somewhere around early 2030. That first phase will include about 50,000 residents of his community living in a circular neighborhood of about 1,500 acres. He's estimated to spend about $25 billion just for that first phase alone, but the budget for the entire project is estimated to be about $400 billion. There are a few regions being targeted for this massive development project, but Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Arizona, and Texas are all in the running. It's not a new concept to do a mixed-use commercial real estate development project where you're building housing and office space and retail and hotels and all of that, but this is not your typical mixed-use development project. Here are the 5 main things that the Telosa project is specifically looking to accomplish. First is that it will be a standalone city, not reliant on any surrounding city services. This means that the city might as well be on an island in the middle of nowhere, even though technically it's going to be in the desert in the middle of nowhere. Second is that the city will be built with eco-friendly architecture, meaning that the materials used will seek to minimize negative environmental impacts. The whole idea of eco-friendly architecture is to construct all of the buildings in the city with materials that will not lead to a permanent depletion of our planet's resources. The city will also use sustainable energy production, which means that it will use enough energy to meet the needs of the community without compromising the needs of future generations. Sustainable energy is usually produced with things like water, solar, and wind, so Mark's city will probably utilize these things and others to achieve sustainability with the energy. Another thing that he's trying to implement is a drought-tolerant water system, which to be honest is kind of a foreign concept to me, so I have no idea how he's going to pull that off. And last, Tolosa will include what he's calling a 15-minute city design, which means that you should be able to access your work, your healthcare, your schools, your shopping, and all of that within 15 minutes of where you live. There are some preliminary renderings that were put together by this architectural firm, Bjark Ingels Group, and to put it simply, this place looks awesome. The future state plans of the finished product look kind of like a normal city, but one of my favorite renderings is the one that shows the city center. So that big skyscraper that you see in the center is called the Equitism Tower, which is supposed to be a beacon for the city, and it includes water storage and farming. Another rendering shows what it'll look like on the ground level of the city center, which is going to prioritize bikes, pedestrians, and autonomous cars. On top of the fact that the concept of this city is admirable, plus it looks amazing on paper, Marc also has a pretty interesting way that he plans to run the economy here. See, in order for a city to be completely sustainable, it needs to have some form of government and political system just to keep the financials of the city in order and promote the general welfare of the citizens. Marc has come up with a new economic system for the city of Tolosa, and he is calling it Equitism. Equitism is a pretty confusing concept to wrap your head around, but Telosa's website describes it as an economic system where the citizens have a stake in the land, so as the city does better, the residents do better. So this shares some similarities with socialism when it comes to the joint ownership of the land, which is supposed to make it possible to fund better services for the residents of the city, but it also shares similarities with capitalism when it comes to basically everything else. This endowment model has been put to the test in places like Alaska, Utah, and Pennsylvania, and it has been successful, so it's not completely unreasonable to think that this would work in Telosa. What Equitism means to the residents of the city of Telosa, in theory, is that they should have access to better education, a higher quality of life, better business opportunities, better access to home ownership, and great city services. If you want a more wordy definition of what all this means, I'll just put a screenshot of that right here, and you can pause to check it out, or just go to the website cityoftolosa.com to read more. Also, some of you guys may be way more knowledgeable when it comes to economic systems than I am, so if you have any opinions about Equitism, let's talk about it in the comments below. The Tolosa project's name was inspired by telos, which means the highest purpose. It's a term coined by Aristotle, and it's the idea of individuals coming together as a society to reach their full potential. It is a fascinating concept to start a city from scratch because you really can't create an infrastructure like this if you're doing an infill project in an already established city. If you're wondering how you can be a part of this movement and live in the city of Tolosa yourself, the good news is this is not a private project and everybody is welcome. Another cool part about this whole concept is that Marc is aiming for it to be incredibly inclusive, meaning that he wants people to move there regardless of their current level of income or walk of life or race or ethnicity or political affiliation. The plan right now is that the first people won't get to move to this city until 2030 when phase 1 is complete, but if you're stoked about the idea of living here, I wouldn't hold your breath because remember, Marc hasn't even officially locked in the right location for this project yet. Regardless of whenever this project comes to life, or even if it comes to life, I just love that there are people in our society who are working hard to create a more sustainable future for our planet. If you enjoyed the video, just one more reminder, if you could hit the like button down below for me real quick before you go, and click subscribe if you're not already a subscriber and you want to see more videos from me because I'm posting new videos every week, but that's all I've got for you guys this time, so until next time, see ya!